Hey everybody, this is Brad. Got another credit tip for you today on buying cars. Brought an assistant to help me out.
My name is Isabella. I would like to drive a Ferrari because they're super nice and I like how fast they go and they're super smooth. If you are ready to buy a new car, here are some buying tips from Meryl Chandler of Echelon Credit Advisors to increase your credit score faster.
Okay, you should have everything you need to do with your identity and establishing that identity and getting it all cleaned up with your creditors and your credit bureaus. Congratulations. You're way ahead of anybody else in the country. And more importantly, we're just getting started. So the second big component to your credit profile is that of your revolving accounts. Okay. Now we call the collection of your revolving accounts your revolving account portfolio. Now I'm going to remind you, this is an information DVD. I want you to listen and take it all in. You still have a workbook and you still have the website to go through and actually make the changes and do the activities. But just remember, your credit profile is a minefield. So don't just go do something surreptitiously and hope all goes well. All right, this has to have a plan, and we've got to take this methodically and step by step. How do revolving accounts contribute to your credit profile? Well, first of all, let's talk about what they are. Number one, a revolving account proves to your creditors, when they're looking at your revolving account profile, it shows longevity, it shows consistency, and it shows utilization. Now, the definition of a revolving account is the borrower may use or withdraw up to a pre-approved credit limit. The amount of the credit available can be raised, but as you pay it off, you can tap out the entire limit, pay it off, tap it out, pay it off. It is revolving. The credit line may be used repetitively, and the borrower makes payments on a percentage. Usually, since 2007, Congress mandated that it be about 4% of the balance. So your payment reflects around 4% of the balance, plus, and that includes interest. The borrower may also repay these minimum payments, or they can pay in full at any time. So that's the definition of a revolving account. We're gonna use that term over and over and over again. Now let's discuss what an 800 plus, an ideal 800 plus revolving account portfolio looks like. Maybe you may be a little surprised, and don't worry, we'll show you how to get to this. From wherever you are, we will show you how to get to this ideal. But it's actually no more than 3 to 4 revolving accounts, okay? Preferably Visas and MasterCards, and I'll tell you why shortly. 3 Visas or MasterCards. We may allow, if you have one, we may allow a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, but preferably only if it has a low balance on it. All your balances can only be between 5 and 20%, and no derogatory accounts. Okay? Quickly, 3 to 4 can be one of those can be a HELOC. Balances of 5 to 20%. They've got to all be Visas and MasterCards except for that HELOC, and no derogatory accounts. Now, the very interesting part of this is that we want those 4 accounts, 3 to 4 accounts, to be at least $50,000 limits. I'll say that again. We ultimately want, in the perfect ideal 800 plus revolving account portfolio, all of those need to be $50,000 limits or higher. How do the revolving accounts contribute to your score? Well, this is really important. First of all, there's 2 calculations that are extremely important. One is on an individual account level, and the other is on the aggregate, or the group, or the entire portfolio. They want to know the age times the balance times the limit times the type of card. Okay, that's how they come up with their particular value. On the aggregate, they're looking for the average age and the average balance and the average limit and the average point value of each type of card. So those are the calculations that they use. Now we're going to apply that in your workbook and on the web. We're going to apply that information so you can kind of get a feel. We have a worksheet there for you, so you can get a feel for exactly how your portfolio stands up against the 800 ideal. Without getting discouraged, some of you may be a little far off, some may be a little closer. Bottom line is we can't do anything unless we know what the facts are. So our worksheets will show you exactly how to determine the value of each one of your accounts, both individually and as a portfolio. So let's take a look at some of the details that are important to evaluating your revolving accounts portfolio. It's essential to understand that the use of your card creates traffic and it satisfies the financial institutions. Remember that MasterCard or that Visa is being used everywhere you go, and those merchants are paying 3% to the banks and Visa, MasterCard for this processing. So there's a lot of money changing hands out there just by you using that card. It also proves how well you manage your account. So if you're making payments faithfully, but also, do you ever go over? Is it inactive? All of these come to bear in creating points for your revolving account portfolio. The longer you have it, shows that you're consistent and dependable. And of course, in financial matters, everybody trusts somebody who's been doing the same behavior for 3, 5, 10, 20 years. You demonstrate the proper use of balances. And the scoring software, FICO, etc., scores revolving accounts based on what we call a balance to limit ratio. Okay, they call it utilization, but pretty technical term. What is that balance to limit ratio? And if it's low and managed well, you get more points than if it's high and fluctuates. So we want to make sure that you understand your behavior is being tracked by the scoring software. Also, the amount of the limit, for good or ill, determines the status of the borrower. Are you an elite borrower? If your credit limits are over $50,000, you're an elite borrower and you're in a completely different class. Even the black card for American Express means that they're offered a black card if in one calendar year a consumer or borrower has used over $1 million, has processed $1 million worth of purchases on any one of their other cards, they will be offered a black card without being asked. And a black card, for good or ill, basically you can buy a G5 Gulfstream 5 jet for $37 million on that thing. So very powerful, but you become an elite borrower the higher your limits go. And finally, the type of card that is in your revolving account portfolio has a great deal to bear on how many points you get and the value of your overall revolving account portfolio. So let's cover that right now. 99.9% of consumers out there do not know what you're about to learn. And what you're about to learn is going to radically change not only your credit profile, but especially your revolving accounts portfolio, okay? Because remember how we said we only want three Visa or MasterCards and maybe one low balance HELOC? Well, I'm going to tell you why right now. All cards are not created equal. In fact, they're radically different, and that's why we only want Visa MasterCards in your portfolio. All right, let's take a look at an example. All of the cards that I'm going to mention right now, let's say that they're 5 years old, they have a balance of $1,000, and they have a limit of $5,000. Okay, 5 years old, $1,000 balance, a $5,000 limit. Now, a Visa or MasterCard will have 100% of the possible points given this scenario. But if you have a Discover card or an American Express card, you're only going to get 80% of the possible points. If you have department store cards, you're only going to get 60% of that Visa and MasterCard 100% points. And if you have finance company cards, you're actually only going to get 40% of the possible points. Okay?
So there's a couple great tips on how to get a higher credit score while you're buying cars. For more great credit tips and how to increase your score even more, even up to an 800 credit score, www.echeloncreditadvisors.com, 801-513-1565.